Computer. Okay, we're on now. Thanks for joining me again for a follow-up interview, Craig.
It's great to
Can you
be
hear me
here.
okay?
Yes, loud and
All right.
clear.
Okay, great. I want to focus on institutional failure. After 50 years investigating organized crime and corruption, what institutional safeguards failed most significantly in America, allowing powerful individuals to operate with increasing impunity?
There are a lot of them, and I could go through everything Donald Trump is doing now. He's fired, I think it is 16 inspectors general. These are the guys who are supposed to oversee the checks and balances and make sure there is some accountability. And he simply eliminated the position. The saddest things is the failure of the press, the failure of the American media. I've been in the media for more than 50 years. When I started out, one big story by one or two reporters could change the course of history. It could capture the entire national conversation. I remember when Seymour Hersh reported the My Lai massacre, and suddenly you saw people's vision of Vietnam change dramatically. The Pentagon Papers and Watergate, it happened again and again, and the checks and balances worked. Americans shared the same set of facts. We no longer share the same factual reality. Everything is divided into silos. The right has taken over the press. Fox News has done enormous damage. More recently, you see Trump's allies, Larry Ellison and David Ellison, taking over CBS, and now it appears CNN is in the works. The media is fragmented. When I grew up, we had just 3 TV networks, and news from the New York Times and Washington Post was important. Now you went on to have hundreds and hundreds of channels on cable, and now far more fragmentation through the internet and social media. So it's very hard for one storyline to animate the public when we're in a constitutional crisis like that. That's
So
very dispiriting.
do you think that the media, they're still doing worthy stories, or do you think that our population has become apathetic to worthy stories, or what used to would have been a worthy story?
I think there are a lot of good reporters out there at the New York Times or the Washington Post. But even there, you see things limiting how good they are. One is access journalism. For the New York Times, Washington Bureau, CNN, or whatever, they want to have access to the White House. And if you have access to the White House today, that means you have to do stories favorable to Donald Trump, or he's going to deny you access. Look at what Pete Exas has done in the Pentagon. No reporter can get in there now. So that's always in play if you're working for one of these major institutions. And I think by now it should be clear to almost everyone that Donald Trump lies a lot. I don't think I have to itemize that today. But this also brings up what is known as both sidesism. And to me, Times and CNN feel they have to give both sides of a story. If someone says 2 and 2 is 4, and his opponents say it's 127, the truth is not somewhere in between. And that's what happens again and again with Donald Trump. You see them being a little too delicate when I think a reporter's first responsibility is to get the truth delivered to readers.
And I see this both sidesism in criminal prosecutions, attempts to prosecute individuals on both sides of the political spectrum, but in some cases it's a real stretch. And I won't specify which way it's leaning, political right or left. Yeah. And what do you think about the gutting of inspectors general, this weaponization of government? What do you think about the FBI in terms of institutional failures and the effects it's had on this country?
I think it's devastating. And one of the big problems there has been the FBI pursues both criminal matters and counterintelligence matters. And it seems like it has utterly failed in counterintelligence from Russian intrusion in the United States. It's extraordinary. When I was a kid, my favorite movie was The Manchurian Candidate, about communists penetrating the highest reaches of American power and getting into the White House. It seemed to me to be Cold War paranoia. And yet here we have someone I think is an asset of Russian intelligence who's become president of the United States twice. And even having been exposed by the January 6th Commission, he managed to be reelected. And that means the FBI failed in its task. And this is one of the greatest counterintelligence failures I've ever seen.
It seems eventually when they finally did try to prosecute, it was too late by then. And a lot of these things were unfolding in plain sight. And you see a mass paralysis or apathy. It's this national apathy.
One of the problems with the press is it will follow these stories so long as there are prosecutions. And the prosecutorial process, the trials, the indictments, and the convictions, the sentencing, provide a narrative structure for reporters. But as soon as you're stopped, it seems that the major papers, the New York Times and the Washington Post, say that's the end of the story.
I
If
found the
anything,
same thing.
be the beginning of the story. That means it's even worse than we imagined, and that they have taken over the prosecutorial processes to the extent that we no longer are a nation of laws.
By the time we get to criminal prosecutions, especially in counterintelligence matters, the damage is done. It's too late. And so part of the significance of the press is to be a canary in the coal mine and warn what's coming.